Hey guys, it's Katrina from the Alluring Bead Boutique, and welcome back to Brick Stitch on a Frame. So this is like the third little short video I've done working on teaching guys the process of adding a row of beads to the outside of the frame. In the second video, we learned how to add a second row using smaller beads and utilizing this increase technique to make sure that we get enough beads on there and there's no huge gaps, and all the beads sit on a nice even plane with our frame, and everything looks really good. When we left off in the second video, I was exiting from the last 8OC bead that I added. I decided to go ahead and add my little component connector here at the top. It's no big deal. So if you're exiting from this 8OC bead, you would just dive down through the bead next to it. As it happens, I wound up having to come out of the top of a different bead. It really doesn't matter. I'm just going to be working towards the center of this frame. So as long as you're exiting the top of the bead, any bead, you're going to come down through the bead right next to it. Plus you're going to come through that 8OC bead on the base row. I'm going to pull that thread all the way through. And so now we are in position to work on the inside of this frame. So I'm going to flip this over so that my working thread is on the back side. I'm sitting over here. That is far away from me. I want that thread further away on the back side. And like with all brick stitch, you're going to pick up 2 to begin any row. I'm going to be using these little 15OC beads here. And I'm going to go ahead and pick up 2 and put them on my needle, and I'm going to carry them down just so I can get a good aim at where I want to position my very first thread bridge. So once again, because now we're back working against the frame is going to constitute our thread bridge. Sorry, let me come out just a little smidge. The frame is going to act as our thread bridge while we work the inside row of this project. So I've got my 2 beads dropped down, and here's where they're sitting. I can bring those beads over with my finger and pull my working thread straight back to see where I want my needle to go through under this frame. I can tell you right now that it's going to be right here. One of my little beads fell off, but anyhow, I'm going to come on between the 2 8O beads on the base to the outside edge of that frame, and I'm going to pull that all the way through. And if you remember, I got a little knot in my thread on the last video, and I'm just going to keep on with it. So now I have my 2 little beads sitting here. They're a little bit hard to hold. Just use your fingers. Do the best you can here. Once again, my second bead is the one I want to pass up through first and to stand up. And this is my step up. So for this particular step, because I'm going to straighten that bead, I'm going to stay on the front side of this frame. So here I am on the front, passing up through that second bead. As we came through the frame, we went from back to front. So now we're on the front. So now I'm going to go ahead and straighten up my first bead, still on the front of the frame. I'm going to come down through bead 1, pull that, and hopefully my knot's not going to give me trouble with these little 15Os. And don't get frustrated if it comes looking a little bit weird. Just position your beads back where they go. Try and get my tail thread out of the way here. There we go. And so now I'm going to come back up through bead 2 again. And when I do, I'm going to put that thread bridge between the bottom of beads 1 and 2 right there. And that's going to serve to straighten my beads up and make everything look really nice. You can see my beads are a little jacked up off the frame, so I'm just going to hold my thumbnail on the top of those beads and pull my thread a little bit firmer until everything sits right up against the frame, just like that. And those 2 little beads are sitting cute side by side. All right, so now in order to add more beads, I got to get back on the back side of this frame. So I'm just going to poke right through the frame. And now I'm ready to pick up my next bead. Still a little bit unsatisfied with that. Yeah, that's a little better. All right, so now I'm going to pick up my next bead. I can drop it all the way down. And this is just like adding that second row of smaller beads. You're just going to have to take your time and work through and see where you want to put the needle through, because you already have an existing, if we didn't have these beads on the outside, you could just work and work and work like we did the first row here. And if you're working a project like that, you can start that way, but then you're going to run into the same problem as you're adding your first row of outside beads. You got to figure out where you're going to position the needle as you poke it through under the frame like this. And we do it just like we did with the beads of row 2. We're just eyeballing it and seeing where the best place is to poke our needle through the frame. So now as I step up, I'm going to poke my needle right through that frame at the same time. And that's going to save me a little bit of time as I work this next round. You want your beads to come in beside each other and to be standing up just like this. And keep working a few here. I'm going to show you guys a few more. I know I'm going to probably come under this next thread bridge right here, so I'm going to pick my bead up and come right through. And so that bead sits nicely beside the previous one, so I can step up. And as I pull my thread, you'll see that it comes in and sits right beside the previous bead. And once again, I'm pulling my thread kind of straight out as I pull up, holding these beads down to the frame a little bit with my thumbnail. I'm probably going to come right under that next little thread bridge. Bring my bead around. See how it's sitting? And do my step up and go to the back of the frame. And there my knot gave me a little bit of a trouble, so let me just fix that problem as I pull gently and pull that bead right up beside the next one. All right, so as I work, if I'm unsure of where I want to poke my needle through under the frame, I can just drop the bead down, carry it over so that my thread runs straight down from the bead, just like that, and try to figure out where's the best, closest place to put my needle through, whether it is over between these two beads or if it is back between these two beads. In this instance, it's going to be the next two beads on the 8-0 row, like that. Put your bead in position. Step up from the bottom to the top and go back through the frame. And pull it in there. Snug it up next to the previous bead so that it's standing up. And then we'll just keep working. I'm going to come through that same thread bridge because that's a very big gap all the way over to between these next two beads. You can see, here's my last bead added. Here's the next gap. So I'm going to come back through my same gap. And being able to judge that just by looking is going to come with practice. So we're just going to practice. Now when I pick up my next bead, I can see that I'm safe to come under that between those next two beads right there, those next two 8-0s, like that. And remember to step up and go back through to the back side of the frame each time. And that's pretty much all there is to it. In this particular instance, if you mess up and you need to take a bead or two out, I would highly recommend taking the thread off the needle. pull back to where you need to make your correction, thread your needle, and then move forward. So I'm going to work on around, come back and show you guys how to close up the beadwork one more time, and then we'll talk about working back to the outside of the frame. So as you're working on your inside row, the same exact thing is going to hold true. You'll want to check your work from time to time by turning your beadwork on the side to make sure that everything is falling on the same plane and that you don't have any beads poking out to the right or left of your frame on the inside as well as the outside. So what I was saying earlier is like we could have went ahead and started this whole project by adding these little 15-0s in the center first. But can you imagine like trying to add these 8-0s and trying to figure out how to get in between, under the thread bridge and between the beads along the frame of these tiny little 15-0s. So if you want to be using smaller beads on the inside and larger beads on the outside, I recommend that you put the larger beads on first and stitch between those to add your inside row. Be much easier than trying to figure out how to get through these tiny 15-0s to add your outside edge. One last thing I want to mention, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but it just now dawned on me. As you are passing, like I have a bead on this needle, and as I go to pass my needle under the frame, I want to feel my needle touch that frame. I do not want to stick my needle between the two 8-0s way out here next to the 11-0. I want to make sure that I am coming up right beside the frame and that I can actually feel that needle touch the frame. This is going to keep you from damaging your existing beadwork out here and pulling things out of shape or creating gaps that weren't previously there. All right, so you can see I've got a few more to go, and I'm almost ready to come back and show you guys how to close the center beadwork. So here I am, and I am just about to the end of this row in the center. So now I need to decide about this last bead. So my thread is to the back, just like it should be, and I've got a bead on this needle. I'm going to carry it down to the end of the thread and let it fall up against the bead frame. I am pretty sure I can fit that bead in there and have it stand up nice without it poking to the front or the back. But I need to determine where I want to pass this needle under. If I pass it right here, it's going to pull that bead. Let's go ahead and put it through there and see. That's the next set of beads. And I want to get my tail thread out of my way. So now if I put it right here, you can see that it's pulling that bead. I hope you can see this better than I can. It is pulling that bead really up close next to this bead right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back my needle back out, just like I showed you guys how to do. So I have backed it back out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come between the same two beads I came through on my last stitch, which is one set back right here. And when I pull this bead into position now, it's going to stand up in a much better angle relative to the very first bead of the row, like that. And that is just something that you're going to have to play around with and make sure that you get that last bead in the right position. So now I have my last bead and my first bead, and it's pretty tight in there. So, I might need to make the decision of whether I want to even keep that bead on or take that bead off. For right now, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it on. So this is my last bead right here that my thread is exiting. Here's the very first bead of this inside row. I'm going to come to the front because this is a little bit easier to close the beadwork from the front. So now I've brought my needle around to the front, and I need to put a thread bridge between the first bead and the last bead. So I am going to come down through the very first bead from top to bottom. And I'm working on the front of the frame now. And now I've got that thread bridge into place. So now I need to go back up through my last bead one more time. I'm going to pull that thread kind of tight, and I'm going to go ahead and pull my thread all the way through. And so now I have connected the beads. I'm going to take my thumbnail once again and just gently snug my beads up against the frame, just like that. So now everything is all completed. The row is done. The beadwork is closed because the first and last bead are connected. And now we would just simply want to sew back out to the outside of the frame. So in order to do that, all I have to do is pass down one bead over. And I'm still on the front of the frame. I'm exiting this bead. I'm just going to pass down through the bead right beside of it, towards the outside edge. And then I am going to come up through the closest 8/0 seed bead here on row 1. And there you have it. That's how you add that inside row and how you close it up at the end. Now, if I were going to embellish this project on the outside edge where the orange beads are, I would sew on out to that row. But because I'm going to be maneuvering, and all I'm going to do is move down through the beadwork till I get to the place where I want to embellish my actual frame, I will move through the 8/0 beads instead of coming out to the orange beads, because the more thread I add on this outside edge here, moving around through those orange beads, the more thick that thread is going to look, the more visible it's going to be. So if I want to move around and come down this way, I'm going to pass through these 8/0s only. So to move through those beads, or just to weave off your thread, you can use these bigger beads, and then your thread is not visible on the outside edge. So I would just move down the next bead, up through the next bead, making sure I don't come out of an orange one, just the 8/0 like that. And weave back and forth and back and forth. I could weave over here, tie this thread off, and then move down into the beadwork this way. But what I'll do for my preference here is I'm going to work down this way, finish my project, work up here, and tie the 2 threads off into a knot, move away, and cut the thread. All right, sorry for that, guys. As you can tell, I have really bad allergies, and it's getting to be all of our trees are budding here, but I'm still having to burn my wood stove to stay warm. My allergies are like in overtime. So anyway, I'm going to just check my work here and show you guys how I did on keeping everything on the same plane. As you can see, I did really well. I don't have any beads poking out to the left or right on the inside rows or the outside rows. And everything looks really, really nice. All right, guys, so that is it for Brick Stitch on a Frame. I hope that you have learned a lot about this technique from these couple of little short videos that I did for you guys. Head over to my website, and there'll be even more information. There'll be written instructions, photos, and the videos to help you get through it. All right, guys, that is it for now. I want to thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Head over to the AlluringBeadBoutique.com and follow my blog.